Today, I'm in sunny Southern California with my friends at Toyota, and I'm going to be driving every new trim level of the brand new 6th Gen 4Runner. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Talon and I make new videos every single week. I was presented with a very cool opportunity. My friends at Toyota said, hey, come down to San Diego and drive some new 4Runners. I, of course, cannot say no to an opportunity like that. So I'm down here on a 3-day trip testing all 9 new trim levels of the brand new 6th Gen 4Runner. Now, for over 40 years, the 4Runner has stayed true to its roots. Everyone knows it as an extremely capable, durable off-road rig, and it can kind of do a little bit of everything. With all of the advancements and refinements of the new powertrains, all of the creature comfort systems, crawl control, MTS, I think these new 4Runners could be better than ever before. The main difference for me is going to be going from a Tacoma to a 4Runner truck SUV. They're going to be very similar in a lot of ways. Whereas the Tacoma is really designed for like this single driver experience, the 4Runner and all of the engineering and everything that went into it, they're much more tailored towards passengers. First, we're going to get a couple of the boring specs that you guys probably already know about out of the way. There are 2 different drivetrain options when it comes to a 6th Gen 4Runner. You, of course, have the iForce 4.2 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder, which offers up to 278 horsepower and 317 pound-feet of torque. It has an EPA estimated 26 miles per gallon on the highway. And then the second powertrain, the one that I am most familiar with, is, of course, the iForce Max. This is the same 2.4 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, but this time with the hybrid system. It produces up to 326 horsepower and a whopping 465 pound-feet of torque. Since they have released this new iForce Max, there's been a lot of rumblings on the internet. People love the old V6. They're not stoked on a 4-cylinder turbocharged motor. I've already covered a lot of this stuff in some previous videos with my own personal truck. And I will say, don't knock it until you try it. The hybrid grades are not only powerful, but you get a little bit more functionality too with a 2400 watt inverter, which is really nice when it comes to how I use vehicles. Of course, overlanding, charging batteries of camera gear, and any kind of like electric rideable I might have with me on my journeys. The iForce Max powertrain is going to be available on the TRD Off-Road, TRD Off-Road Premium, the Limited, and it will be standard on the Platinum, which is new for this year, the TRD Pro, and of course, the new Trailhunter. For a few more features, you have a standard power rear window across all models, which is a really nice touch, kind of keeping it back to those original roots. There's also an available hands-free power liftgate. There's also an available 14-inch touchscreen, which I'm no stranger to, of course, on my 3rd Gen Tundra and 4th Gen Tacoma. You have Toyota Safety Sense 3.0 standard across all of these vehicles, and it's a starting MSP of about $40,000. Now, the 9 grades that we're going to be talking about today, we're going to run through them in order, and I'll segment out the video so you guys can jump around and see exactly what you want to see. We, of course, have the very base SR5 grade. A step up from that with a few more features is the TRD Sport. Toyota is now offering a premium version of that TRD Sport, which is a little bit higher up. And then we have the very popular TRD Off-Road as well as a TRD Off-Road Premium. A step up from that for the people who are a little bit more sophisticated, you want a little more luxury, they have a Limited grade, and new for this year, a Platinum grade as well. And then all the way up at the top, we of course have the 2 kind of battling it out for the #1 spot, the Trailhunter and the TRD Pro. Now I'm going to have the opportunity to drive every single one of these vehicles, so we're going to start from the bottom, work our way up to the top dogs, and I'm going to give you guys some of my own personal opinions all about the new 6th Gen 4Runner. Currently sitting in 6th Gen SR5. This is the starting point, pretty much as basic as you can get. It is a non-hybrid, so there are pros and cons to that. Obviously, the price is a good thing. It's not as expensive as the iForce Max. You also don't have the added weight and the lack of cargo room because of the batteries in the back. So this is going to appeal to the widest audience possible. If you want a nice SUV with some Toyota quality and features, but you don't want to break the bank, this is going to be your kind of entry-level point. Now, I have driven the same powertrain on a non-hybrid Tacoma in the past, but after driving the iForce Max, I really gravitated towards it. Just more power, better torque specs, and for off-road use, like I'm using my own vehicles, it really makes a lot of sense. That being said though, as a vehicle that is off-road capable, but you're not going to be doing anything crazy with, I'm curious to see if this will feel like it has enough power to get by. From my experience with the 5th gen 4Runners, and like everyone always talks about, they are a little bit slouchy. They could definitely use some more power. Everyone loves the V6. They are incredibly reliable. However, once you lift them, put armor on them, larger tires, wheels set up for overlanding, and then you go and try to drive up some mountain passes, you really start to feel that weight, very similar to the 3rd gen Tacoma. So unless you're gonna re-gear or tune it or do something to kind of get back a little bit of that power loss from building a vehicle like this, you might be hurting a little bit. I really do dig simplistic vehicles like this. I mean, there are very few creature comforts in this thing at all. There's actually no dual zone climate control. All of the switches on here are blank, so there's no locker like the off-roads and some of the higher trims have. There's no SDM, sway bar disconnect mechanism. This one does have part-time 4-wheel drive, 4 high, 4 low. And then it has Sport, Normal, and Eco, so that's normal for the drive modes, and it does have a tow haul mode as well. There's a much smaller infotainment screen on this guy, so less distractions, kind of makes it more about the driving experience, but when I compare it to something like in my recent videos, the GR Corolla, that's really simple, but you're getting a really cool driving experience. This is more of just like a everyday car, kind of normal, so nothing crazy going on. But if you like simplistic, then this is definitely going to be up your alley. The gauge cluster on the SR5 is also a little bit different than some of the higher trims. It is digital, but it is laid out a little bit differently. So again, less things to mess around with on there. I much prefer the full digital gauges that are on some of the higher trim vehicles, but that's really just personal preference. All right, finally made it to some asphalt. The car is warm, so we're just gonna pull out here. I'm in the normal drive mode, and we are going to give it the beans. We're gonna give it all it's got. Starting at an advantage, going downhill. I mean, it's definitely more powerful than the V6 feels, that's for sure. It almost feels a little bit lighter, and that could be just my kind of gauge thrown off from driving all of the other trims while I'm out here, but definitely less mechanical things in here, so I'm assuming this would be lighter. We have the cloth seats on here as well. For an on-road experience though, 4-cylinder turbo feels pretty good. Now the second you start turning this into an overland vehicle, if that's what you're into, you're definitely going to feel a lack of power in the torque category once you get into armor and like the really heavy stuff. So I don't think I would really recommend an SR5 to someone who wants to do a lot of that off-road stuff. If you're gonna take a vehicle like this off-road, you should probably get the off-road, something with a sway bar disconnect, the multi-terrain select, all of the kind of off-roady features. That stuff is going to go a long way. Can even hear a little bit of turbo noise too, which is interesting. My experience with the 5th gen 4Runner has been a little bit limited, but we did own one for a little while, and I drove that thing both on and off-road. And even though this thing is really simplistic and the 4Runner that we owned was actually an off-road, I still feel like this vehicle is just a little bit more refined with the new chassis improvements. The steering feels really nice. It's all really familiar to me, and if you've been driving Tacomas or 4Runners at all in your life, then you probably already have a pretty good understanding of how this thing drives. Now, if you take an SR5 and just add a little bit more stuff to it, you get up to the next trim level, which is probably my least favorite out of any trim level that Toyota offers. Currently sitting in a TRD Sport. This is a regular I-Force, so no hybrid on this one. And they have just taken an SR5 and added some features that I personally don't really care about. Right off the bat, I think one of the most notable things is a little bit of a suspension change. So they have a TRD Sport tuned suspension on this, which feels a little bit nicer than just a standard SR5. It has 20-inch alloy wheels, which I would prefer something much smaller than that, like an 18. And then you have probably the most signifying add-on that makes it look like a sport. It's really like a TRD Pro hood with the gloss black hood scoop on here, which is non-functional. You come to the interior and you still have cloth seats. You don't really have any extra off-road controls. You have four-wheel drive, regular drive mode, tow haul, but no sway bar disconnect, no multi-terrain select, crawl control, or anything like that. So this is just kind of like an upgraded SR5. The reason I say that this is my least favorite out of all of the trims is because you're paying more than an SR5, and I don't think it's really worth paying more to get the things that this specific truck offers. Same thing with the Tacomas as well. It's not just a 4Runner thing, it's really across all Toyota products. Now, one upgrade that is nice is the 12.3-inch digital dash, which is an upgrade over the SR5. Like I said, I really do like this dash and all of the information that you can display on it compared to the simple version. And you have a Q wireless charger, and you guys probably know how I feel about wireless chargers in Toyota products. Don't care for them, never really use them, just not a big fan of that. On top of that, you have a blue trimmed interior, and I'm not a fan of blue. Kind of nitpicking at this point, but this is just my least favorite version of the 4Runner and Tacomas too. From a new generation perspective though, this thing definitely drives really nice, and I think I'm slowly starting to prefer this over the 5th gen. I would really like to drive a 6th gen non-hybrid back-to-back with a 5th gen V6, just to really feel the difference between straight V6 and then a 4-cylinder turbo. But just from like a butt feeling, a gut feeling, driving perspective, I think I am a fan of the 4-cylinder turbo, which a lot of people on the internet hate, and I totally get it. But until you experience them and you realize how much more refined everything is, I don't think you will fully grasp what I'm saying here. Now, one thing that might save the TRD Sport reputation for me personally is this year they have a new version where you can get this as a premium. Now, I don't have access to one of those today, but there are a few different options that may make it just a little bit more worth it over a TRD Sport, and definitely more so than an SR5. You're going to have things like the Softex trimmed seats, which is a lot more premium feeling than these cloth seats. You're also going to get the massive 14-inch display over here as opposed to the 7-inch that the SR5 and the Sport are rocking. You also get JB audio all the way around. Then you also have things like the panoramic view mode, a hands-free power tailgate if that's something that you're into. Some of the models also have the kick sensor as well, so if your hands are full, swipe your foot under and it will lift automatically. And then you also get a TRD gear selector and a heated steering wheel. I'm a big fan of heated steering wheels at this point. Haven't had that on any vehicle until last year, and now I want it on basically every vehicle. We just went from one of my least favorites to quite possibly could be one of my favorites. I'm now sitting in just a pretty standard 6th gen 4Runner TRD Off-Road. Now, this is going to be a step up again from the TRD Sport, so it's optioned with some things like some high strength underbody protection. We're down to 18-inch wheels now and a 33-inch tire. Right up my alley, of course. We have Bilstein shocks for suspension on here, and now we get a little bit more off-road controls. We do have the drive mode, DAC crawl modes, MTS, multi-terrain select, as well as a rear locking differential. Previously on the 5th gen, all of that stuff was found up here. Now it's down here, just like it is on my Tacoma. So this one is probably going to be the most appealing for who I think my audience is, probably you guys out there. You don't want to spend a ton of money and get a Trailhunter or a Pro, but you want some nice features. You also want simplicity. If I was going to buy one, this might be in the running because it's really simple. I would probably modify this thing. I would probably change suspension and run bigger tires and put armor all over it and lights and my typical thing. And this is going to be a good basic way to do that. There is also a premium version of the TRD Off-Road sitting right over here. We're gonna dive into that one next, but for now, taking it off-road because it's an off-road. I'm already in 4 low. I haven't driven this part of the trail or course yet, but we are going to see how it feels. The winds out here in Southern California are picking up like crazy, and it's not really gonna affect me being in a vehicle, but just something to note. It is windy. So my previous truck, the 3rd gen Tacoma, that was actually an off-road, so I'm kind of used to how the Bilstein suspension is. That was a pretty big dip right there, and this thing just does it no problem. One thing that I'm already looking for, which I don't think this has, is a camera system. It of course is going to come with a backup camera, but there's no view button down here next to the gear selector. I actually really like the cameras that I have on all of my vehicles, because when you're going down really steep trails like this right here, especially if you're not familiar with where you're driving, now we're going up at probably like a 28-degree angle here. I want to know what's in front of me, so I often flip on that view mode, especially in 4 low. For the trucks that do come with that, it's really nice because you can see all different angles of the vehicle. You can see your wheel placement. So this is a little more analog, of course, but it's handling everything really well so far. Just simple and basic. A lot of things that you need, nothing you really don't. I probably won't have to dive into these features right now, but the multi-terrain select and the crawl control has been so refined compared to the 3rd gen Tacoma or the 5th gen 4Runner. It's pretty much the same in the newest Land Cruiser too, and I can't say enough good things about it. It will really aid your driving, so if you come across something that you're really not comfortable doing manually on your own, you have some aids and creature comforts there to kind of help the truck out. A lot of people don't like those features because it takes a lot out of the actual driving experience. The car will kind of drive itself, but I like it for kind of like emergency situations. If I get stuck in sand or something out here, or in Colorado, if I'm in the snow, there's a bunch of different modes that will really help you out. Pretty good articulation out of just some basic Bilstein suspension. I feel like this is something that you could live with for a little while without spending money and really switching it up. It's not going to be as nice as the Old Man Emu on the Trailhunter or the QS3 on the Pro models, but again, if you're working within a budget, you want to keep it nice and simple, this is probably going to be the one for you. A little bit of articulation test here with the off-road tuned Bilsteins. Keeps everything pretty level. I think that feels pretty nice actually for just kind of basic off-road suspension. Another really steep drop. That's not showing on camera, but parking sensors are going off, so you know it's steep. I think the more I drive this thing through this course, the more I'm actually appreciating the simplicity of it. This is just a regular I-Force, so we don't have the hybrid extra torque and power on this thing, but the 4-cylinder turbo is doing a pretty dang good job going over all this stuff. Really steep climbs. We're not super high in elevation or anything, but it does feel really nice. It's kind of like the perfect starting platform. If you know you're going to modify it, you get an off-road. That's how I started with my 3rd gen. I went a little bit of a different route with my 4th gen Tacoma, but if I wanted to go kind of crazy with a build and really do my own thing, this would be in a contending spot for sure. This or the hybrid though? That's the real question. So let's hop in the I-Force Max. If you can spend a little bit more money than a standard off-road, this one I'm already liking a lot. The I-Force Max version of the TRD Off-Road. Hybrid powertrain now, so more power, more torque. This seems very familiar to me, very similar to my personal 2024 TRD Pro Tacoma. I've got a 14-inch screen, JBL audio all the way around, Softex seats in this one. We have the cameras that I was talking about on our last drive, so I have full terrain monitoring all the way around. MTS, crawl control. This is very, very similar to my own vehicle. Heated and cooled seats. They have a heated steering wheel, auxiliary switches over here. There's a lot of good things that I like about this, but it is going to cost you quite a bit more money. The only major difference that I think I will notice is no isodynamic seats. The Tacoma, Toyota looks at as a personal like me vehicle. It's about the driving experience for the person driving, which is why they offered that. The 4Runner, however, they really focus a lot of their design and engineering into how passengers feel. So you have a bunch of different seating options, obviously. Way more room in the back for passengers, which is a plus for a 4Runner, of course. And there's even an optional third row like people have expected over the past couple of years. The only downside is I don't think you can get that third row when you have an iForce Max. The hybrid batteries are found in the back, and because of that, it eats up on space a little bit. So I don't think it is going to come with a hybrid optional third row seat. That being said, we are in 4 low again, and let's see how this thing feels. Now we have basically all of the off-road controls, except this one does not come with the sway bar disconnect, which is a really nice feature. I've actually been using that a bunch on my own personal truck, so you're gonna have to get into something a little bit higher trimmed to get that. We do have a rear locking differential though, which is a good thing. Now, since I'm in 4 low, let me go into the view mode. And this is what I was talking about missing out on before. I can see all of my different wheels. I can see where they're actually going to be placed, going over obstacles and things like that. And that is a huge plus when you're climbing up really steep things like this. I'm just staring at the sky, but I can at least see what's in front of me on the screen here. Already, I can tell a big difference in the torque numbers because of the hybrid system. And again, this is basically what I'm used to. So a lot less effort with the accelerator pedal, and in 4 low, I mean, it just does everything you want it to. I'm actually liking the shorter wheelbase. This is, of course, a little bit shorter than my own Tacoma. So the approach angles and departure angles feel a little bit different. It doesn't take you quite as long to get over obstacles, and it just feels a little bit more planted because of that. I feel like the tires can stay in contact with the ground a little bit easier. So this is going to be a great trim for a lot of people too who want to off-road and they're okay with spending just a little bit more money. If you know you're going to build up a 4Runner and it's a TRD Off-Road, you may actually want to opt for something like this. I mean, I think I personally would, just for things like the cameras and then the creature comforts of having a heated steering wheel, heated and cooled seats, just things like that. But if you are on a tight budget, then just the standard iForce is going to be the way to go. This suspension is pretty much identical. It's going to get you by for a majority of what people do when they're off-roading, but again, not quite as good as the Fox or the Old Man Emu suspension on the Trailhunter and the TRD Pro. Parking sensors going off again because of all of the dips and everything. The iForce Max just feels a little bit more effortless driving through stuff like this. It's not something that you're really going to notice again unless you drive them back to back like I keep talking about. And before this year, I was not really a firm believer in hybrid technology, but now that I've got to experience quite a few platforms with a hybrid system, it's changed me. A lot of people hate the 4-cylinder turbos and they hate hybrids and they just want V6s and everything, but it's just so much more refined. This is a really nice vehicle. Driving this around now is going to make my decision kind of hard. What would I actually pick if I was going to buy one of these? The turning radius on this thing feels great too. I feel like it may be even a little bit tighter than the Tacoma just because of the change in length on the wheelbase. Suspension feels good. Really nothing to complain about there given there are options above and below this. I think this is a really good kind of middle tier. I do wish I could leave the view on to see all the tires and everything while you're traveling a little bit quicker, but as you can see, doing like 12 miles an hour there and it's just giving me a rear camera. If I go slow here, now I can see everything. Let's see, we're at 5 miles an hour, 6. Cameras are definitely useful. So about 10 miles an hour there, it cuts off, takes you back to your previous screen, but that feature is really nice to have. I'll say that this track is very tame for what an off-road is capable of. I know what you can actually do with these things in their stock form, and it's nice to have steep climbs and different kind of undulations and little bumps like that. so you can get a feel for it, but I know this thing is capable of even more than what we're doing right now. Really steep. steep declines. Right here we have another one, might even be more steep. Definitely don't want to carry a ton of speed over something like that. We're just looking right at the ground. So that about wraps up the TRD Off-Road Premium. If money is a concern and you're really trying to get into a new one, I think I could be pretty happy with just a standard TRD Off-Road. However, if you do have a little bit of extra money to kind of splurge a little bit more, I definitely think that this is probably the option that I'd go with as of right now. This would be a really good base stock vehicle to kind of do your own thing with, and you still get a lot of the features that you will also see on some of the higher trims that we are about to look at next. Now we're in a trim that some of you who prefer the finer things in life may enjoy. This is the 6th Gen 4Runner Limited. Now I say this is one for those who enjoy the finer things because everything in here is just a little bit more premium. You of course have some new leather seats here. These are heated and cooled. You basically have all of the creature comforts that you could want minus the off-road functions. So if you are just looking for a nice SUV to run around town, shuttle kids places and stuff like that, you can do it with a little bit of luxury in a platform like this. This one does come equipped with the JBL audio all the way around, and it even has the detachable JBL speaker up here in the dash, which is a cool touch. I actually really enjoy this on my Tacoma. Over on my left-hand side, we have all sorts of controls. There are 4 different auxiliary ports for any kind of exterior lighting or whatever you could see fit to go into those. You got the jellyfish launcher down below, and then instead of where you would find on the Trailhunter or Pros the control for a light bar, you actually have a control for automatic side steps on this thing. Very similar to the GX, if you caught my recent video on that. This one is of course an iForce Max, so the power feels really at home to me. Going from the SR5s or just a simple iForce model to the iForce Max really makes a huge difference when you're driving them back to back. I'm driving on some of the same mountain roads that we were just on, and this just feels better all around because of the torque. Now down below the gear select lever here, where you would typically have some of those off-road features, you do not have that, so this is going to be similar to the SR5 that we looked at earlier. Just a drive mode selector, a tow haul mode, and then your 4-wheel drive selection as well. No sway bar disconnect, no rear locker, but this is going to be kind of the grocery getter in luxury version of the 6th Gen 4Runner. The suspension on this one is pretty basic, and that was one of the first things that I noticed when getting into this vehicle. Driving down the dirt trail to the road that we're on right now, I definitely felt the bumps a lot more when compared to some of the other options that come with Bilstein or Fox or Old Man Emu. But for on-road driving experience, the iForce Max just feels really good. The suspension for on-road doesn't really need improvement. It's comfortable, it's what you would expect out of a 4Runner, but it's just not going to be as off-road capable as some of the other options out there. So this is the 4Runner with just a little bit more sophistication. You do have things like a power moonroof over here. This one also has the power rear view mirror, which I'm not a huge fan of. I actually have that on 2 of my trucks, and I honestly don't really use it all that much. But a lot of people who are not like true car enthusiasts buying them for a purpose other than just getting around town, I feel like that type of consumer really enjoys all of the creature comforts and all of the little tech pieces. Things like this mirror, the huge 14-inch screen, the nice premium JBL audio system, the optional seat colors and stuff like that. I personally have an appreciation for something that is a little more sophisticated, but as you guys know, I'm mainly off-road, purpose-built, function first. So when you add a little bit more flair to a vehicle, it's nice, but for me, function definitely comes first over all of the tech and creature comforts. If the limited trim wasn't quite enough for you guys, now we're bumping up to a new one for this year, the Platinum 4Runner. This one slots in above the limited, but beneath the Trailhunter and Pro, and this is really like the luxury spin on the 4Runner platform. This is going to offer people kind of like a high-end luxury feel, but not quite all the way up to a Lexus level. Coming fresh off of my GX 550 review, I see a lot of similarities between this and that. This one, of course, comes equipped with the iForce Max powertrain and basically every feature that you can think of on the inside, and then even a little bit more on top of that. We have the 14-inch screen, JBL audio all the way around. This one does come standard with a tow package and a heads-up display. You're still going to get the capability of a 4Runner, but you're just going to get it in a more refined, again, more sophisticated package. One thing that I noticed is that the drive modes down here are very similar to the GX that I was just testing out the other week. We can go down to an eco mode, up into a comfort, where the suspension is going to be a lot more comfortable. The steering is also going to be a little bit looser and floatier. So if you're just driving around town, cruising on some back roads, going for a drive, this is going to be the mode for you. Bump it up into a normal mode or go all the way up to Sport S, where you can really feel that power and torque come on, or we have Sport S Plus, and this was kind of game-changing for my thoughts on the GX, but let's see how 4-cylinder turbo feels. It throws you back. It feels, feels really good. On the Sport S Plus, the steering is tightened, the suspension is tightened a little bit, and for some twisty mountain back roads like we're on right now in Southern California, that is what mode you want to be in. Driving this now with a few extra drive modes makes me wonder, how is Toyota tuning all of these different electronic systems? Because this in Sport Plus, Sport S Plus, it feels a lot more responsive, which obviously it is, but are they holding back on some lower trim models in order to get a feeling like this? Is there a big tuning difference between, say, a TRD Sport, an Off-Road, Trailhunter, Pro, Platinum? I'm not entirely sure. But if I was going for a luxury 4Runner, of course this one slots above the Limited, but I mean, I prefer this one a little bit more than the Limited. I'm not sure why Toyota decided to do a Platinum this year. There are a lot of different options all across the board, and hopefully this video is making some kind of sense for you guys, but there are, of course, a lot of different options to pick from. This is definitely like the baller, swanky, kind of drive around town, go to the mall, like the ultimate kind of soccer mom style of 4Runner, but you do still have the capability like I mentioned. So you have 4 high and 4 low. You have the nice digital display on here. This is basically like, kind of like a Pro or a Trailhunter without the off-road capability features. More of a luxury suspension instead of an off-road or Baja suspension. The styling, there's a lot of black accents on the outside, kind of getting rid of any chrome that you might have seen on the Limited. It's a little sleeker looking in my opinion. Drives great. I mean, this power in the Sport S Plus mode feels really good, and it is zippy for a 4Runner. I never gravitated towards the 5th gen too much just because it's kind of a dog to drive, especially once you get a lift and wheels and tires, you add a lot of weight. The thing is not quick, whereas I would classify this as quick. Not fast, but it gets up and moves. I think my only complaint about this model is, of course, the price. Everyone can complain about the price, and that's pretty standard nowadays, but I'm not a fan of the interior of this. I like the dash and a lot of the accent pieces, but anything that is soft touch leather, like these door cards, the seats and everything, it's like, it's hard to tell. It's like a navy blue and kind of that orange gold that you find in the Trailhunter. It's a really weird combo. Again, not a huge fan of blue in any way, shape, or form on a vehicle, but that's just personal preference, obviously. The black paint on the exterior looks really sharp, especially since there is pretty much no chrome on this thing. So I think a black interior would be really nice on this, or the cockpit red. The red interiors like you can find on the TRD Pros, it's pretty shocking when you see them in person. They are super bright. It looks really cool. I'm not a huge red guy, but When I think of Toyota and the heritage of everything that they've done for years and years, you think of Toyota colors, the orange, the red, the yellow. And not that I'm ever going to buy a Platinum. I don't even know if I'm going to buy a 4Runner, obviously. I don't even really need another vehicle at this point. But if they made this with something other than this blue, which hopefully they do, I would definitely be a little bit more of a fan. I kind of want to go back to comfort, but at the same time, I'm having a lot of fun driving this thing almost like a sports car through this canyon here. It's really nice when you can get in a super functional like SUV, but you have a ton of power, but cargo space, and you have all these creature comforts, but it handles really well too. This is a really cool trim. I actually didn't think I'd really like this much, but maybe after driving some Lexus products and now this like luxury version of the 4Runner, maybe I'm getting a little too bougie. I don't own one. I don't plan on owning one, but I can appreciate them, that's for sure. We have reached the top, or I should say tied for the top, now sitting in a 6th gen 4Runner Trailhunter edition. New model for this year, obviously, following suit with the Tacoma, and they have set up a special course for these 4Runners. I hear maybe a little bit of rock crawly, rock garden kind of stuff. We should be able to check out a lot of the cool features of this truck now. So this Trailhunter is going to be equipped very similar to its Tacoma version. It's really designed from the ground up for overlanding, off-roading, to be able to carry gear with you, rooftop tents and cooking stuff in the back. It's an adventure-ready rig right from the factory, which is cool. It's a good option, and a lot of people think that this would be right up my alley. Typically it is. I opted for the Pro Tacoma, and then I also did a comparison between the Trailhunter and the Pro Tacoma, and I kind of laid out my thoughts there. So I'm curious if this will feel different. Would I actually prefer a Trailhunter over a Pro 4Runner? I guess we're gonna find out. So pretty much everything on the interior here feels just like the Trailhunter Tacoma. We're already getting into a rocky section here. I'm in 4 low. I'm actually in a rock mode. We have full overland crawl control, all of the off-road features. I mean, we have everything in here now, and that is really why this thing shines compared to some of the lesser models. I mean, it just walked through that no problem. This one does come equipped with the Old Man Emu suspension, so quite a big step up from the TRD Off-Road models, or the Off-Road Premium. Way bigger kind of undulations here in the trail. Suspension is flexing out like crazy for sure, but very stable. It feels very planted in here. There we go, hanging a tire a little bit. Traction control kicks right in and we just go right over it. So on this trail, this is where I might actually, oh yeah, we have a stabilize disconnect now. Disconnect that would have made that obstacle much easier. We do have the rear locking diff and all of the MTS stuff. Here's a really off-camber section. We are leaning. We're almost leaning at 30 degrees right here. That sway bar disconnect. Oh yeah, that does wonders. That is a really nice feature to have if you're gonna opt for a more like fully loaded, expensive version. So all of these new 4Runners, they start around like the $40,000 mark, and this is again the top, tied with the Pro, coming in at even more than the Pro or the Trailhunter Tacomas, about $66,000. And that's crazy. I obviously don't like talking about prices of vehicles because it gets everyone up in arms, and I totally understand. I mean, everything nowadays is expensive, but is that price tag worth it for what you're getting out of a vehicle like this? I mean, this is pretty much fully loaded. I actually want to check out the back of this too. I'm curious if there is an ARB compressor in here, kind of like the Trailhunter Tacoma. This trail is much more familiar to me, like something I would be doing in my own vehicle. A lot more technical than just some of like the dirt trails that we've been ripping on today. So use case wise, this thing is the most functional for how I like to actually use vehicles, and so far it's doing everything very well. This is of course an iForce Max, and that extra torque goes a long way when you have to go slow and kind of pop your tires up over different obstacles. The hybrid system definitely does a vehicle like this justice because, again, we're at the top. This is kind of as good as the 4Runner can get for this specific application. We, of course, have the Pro as well, which is going to be for more kind of go fast Baja type of stuff. But here we have a rock section too. Actually, there's a spotter over here as well. This thing's great.
Actually see rocks.
Yeah.
I'm surprised how many people don't.
See rocks.
Keeping them off the big stuff and the sharp.
Yeah, that's good.
There's one more on the right as after you turn the corners.
Okay, thanks, Jim.
Have fun.
That was kind of a funny comment. He said, oh, you actually see rocks. A lot of people that come out to these events are auto journalists, magazines, some content creators. I mean, like everyone across the board. It's a really cool opportunity, and thanks again to Toyota for inviting me out to this. I feel like I'm a little bit of an outsider here because I really am just using Toyotas for off-roading. The on-road stuff doesn't really interest me all that much unless it's going to be like a GR kind of drive event. But I guess a lot of people probably get like pretty nerve-wracked going through a lot of this stuff. But as you guys know, if you've been watching the channel, we see lots of rocks, lots of obstacles, and this Trailhunter's doing a really good job. I'm not sure if we're coming up to the end quite yet, but I guess kind of my final thoughts for now on the Trailhunter is that from a turnkey perspective, this is really what you would want in Colorado. The Tacoma, it feels a little more like racy to me just because, well, of course I have a Pro. I like driving fast, but when it comes to kind of slow rock crawly stuff, the Trailhunter is really built for this, and I don't think you could really go wrong with either of them. I'm curious how a Pro with the Fox QS3 suspension would feel going through some of this stuff. I'm pretty impressed. I think I like the Trailhunter 4Runner more than I like the Trailhunter Tacoma. A little bit of a different wheelbase on it. Pretty much same everything else. I mean, this feels like right at home. If I didn't look in the back, I would kind of feel like I'm driving a Tacoma until I start going over obstacles, but this is a good one. If you guys can afford it, this is great. So now, this is TRD John.
Hello, guys.
A lot of you guys probably know him and his channel. We are currently cruising around the Pro course in the 6th gen TRD Pro. And if it came to my decision of buying one of these, my immediate thought would be to come to this kind of platform, mainly because I already have the TRD Pro Tacoma. John also has a TRD Pro Tacoma, and interior-wise, it is pretty much identical. Like, I feel like we're in a Tacoma right now, other than maybe the driving dynamics, which we'll get into in a little bit. So same drivetrain, same even buttons on the interior here, stabilizer disconnect, the rear locker in the middle, all sorts of crawl control modes too. So we're driving up a really steep embankment here. It does well though.
A little bit different of a course, it seems.
I really don't have much to even say about this right now because it's so similar to the Tacoma.
I'm curious, like, once we start, like, driving, like, if the seats will be, like, different, you know?
Yeah, so the isodynamic seats are not available on these 4Runners because this is more of a passenger. Yeah. This is where we're going to be able to tell the main difference between a Pro 4Runner and Tacoma. It still has the same Fox QS3, but no hydro bumps in the rear. It's just a standard bump stop. Being in Southern California, there's a lot of like really loose, silty dirt and sand around here, but from a passenger's perspective, it feels like it's handling everything really nicely so far. So going into this, I was basically expecting a very similar feel to the Tacoma, and from my perspective right now, it's kind of how it feels. All right, my turn to drive TRD Pro. All right, we're here at the first kind of steep climb. I'm going to just leave it in 4 high. I know it's flat over the top of this, so we're just gonna see how it does. I'm gonna drive it like I would my truck, nothing crazy.
Yeah, I just didn't give her enough juice.
Yeah, as long as you like rely on that hybrid to give you that torque. I mean, this thing's making almost 500 pound-feet of torque, so.
It's pretty crazy. It's super low RPM too, like a diesel almost.
Yeah. All right, now we can hoon a little bit. I just love that feeling of the Fox. Really familiar feeling. A little slide into the corner.
Oh yeah, you're getting it. You're letting her eat.
Nothing too crazy though.
Some brakes too.
Yeah, I forget what tires are on this one.
Open countries.
Okay. So we have like a all-terrain tire on here. Honestly, it makes it a little more playful. You're gonna slide a little bit more than like a mud terrain would in conditions like this. Very composed though. I thought this would feel like significantly heavier than the Tacoma.
Right.
But
it almost like weirdly feels, dare I say, a little lighter. I kind of want to drive the Tacoma on this just to see how it is. The back end feels way more responsive, like less play, obviously, because there's...
I think a combination of the hybrid batteries positioned in the back plus no hydro bumps, like I feel like there's more of a knock in the rear over some
like
hard hits.
Feeling it harder, yeah.
It's not like intrusive, it's not like a huge complaint, but just a comparison.
Passenger though, because these don't have the ISO seats, I definitely feel myself bouncing a whole lot now.
Yeah, you don't know when I'm gonna like hit the brakes or
Right.
turn or anything. I mean, this is pretty much exactly what I was expecting. It's good. Yeah, that bump right there.
I feel like that's obviously a little softer than the Taco because like it's in a bed that's not part of the cab, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I haven't even messed with any of the MTS or crawl control or anything.
We have it in sport mode.
We're not even in sport mode. I mean, that could get us in trouble.
Yeah, for sure.
We'd get a little too rowdy. Now, just because we're in TRD Pro Tacoma, so both feeling at home here and curious to drive this back to back now and see what differences we can notice, if any. I'm typically not a fan of like the brown, but the mud bath looks pretty good.
Yeah.
Now I would put it in sport, but because we were not in sport before, I'm not going to do that. All right, going straight up. Oh yeah. I think I had a little more speed in the 4Runner doing that. It feels lighter back there for sure when you're going up a grade that steep.
Some wheel hopping too.
Yeah. So I feel the weight difference now between the two.
Yeah.
All right, now we can go a little quicker.
These ISO seats already feel better.
Yeah. I think that's going to be the main noticeable difference is I can actually feel the seat shifting a little bit.
Right. My butt feels like a little bit more planted too.
Like that would have been a pretty hard hit there with no bump stops or anything. Something about the way this drives feels even different than my own truck. And I'm not sure if it's a pre-production thing or what, but I'm curious if you'll feel any different.
Yeah.
I think I would actually prefer to be in two-wheel for some of this stuff.
Oh yeah,
but
for sure.
like that bump right there, that was hydro bump for sure.
Yeah.
The 4Runner definitely like clanked a little bit over that one.
Yes.
This feels not quite as nimble for some reason. And again, I don't know if it's just because of the platform differences or just different vehicle, but I think they feel pretty identical across the board. However, the 4Runner feels really nimble, like you said.
I wonder if that's a lesser wheelbase thing, or
Oh,
you know?
that's true. I didn't think about that. So we are a little bit longer
Right.
being in the Tacoma. Yeah, I think the shorter wheelbase is an advantage when you want to get a little rowdier. Yeah, see, turning radius on this.
Oh yeah, way more poopy. The TRD Pro Tacoma actually does have pretty bad turning radius.
Not as bad as a third gen Tundra.
Oh my god.
That thing is like
Bro,
driving.
have you driven a third gen Tundra Pro though?
No.
It's even worse.
Is it?
Oh my god, it is so bad.
Oh man.
So that's
We're about to experience what it feels like to jump 6th gen TRD Pro. All right, guys. Wow. And there's no hydro bumps on this either,
No, that's
which is
crazy.
crazy.
yeah, like I didn't feel the back like slam like you would a normal Tacoma that doesn't have hydro bumps in the back.
Yeah. Whoa, that looks nuts from out here too. Wow. All right, guys, we have made it to the end. Hopefully you enjoyed all of the insight on the 6th Gen 4Runner. It has been an absolute blast today, and I am very conflicted on what I would actually pick. Since I already own a TRD Pro Tacoma, I kind of think I'm actually leaning towards either a TRD Off-Road or the TRD Off-Road Premium. It really comes down to how much money you are willing to spend on one of these new vehicles. Since I already own a TRD Pro vehicle, I think I would opt for one of those middle grades. But if I had to choose between the Trailhunter and the TRD Pro, it's really hard to tell, but I definitely like the Trailhunter version of the 4Runner more than I like the Trailhunter version of the Tacoma. So if I could have like best of both worlds, I think I would do TRD Pro Tacoma, which I have, and then a Trailhunter 4Runner. I think that would be like a killer stable. Kind of redundant. I mean, they're very, very similar vehicles, but I've been pretty impressed with what the new 4Runner has to offer, and hopefully you guys are excited as well. I think Toyota did a really good job at kind of rounding out this entire line, because as soon as they get on the road and people are out there enjoying them, if there are any kinks, they will get worked out eventually, and I think these are going to be very popular for the next probably like 10 years. We don't really know how the life cycles are going to change with all of these new platforms that Toyota has released lately, but I'm definitely looking forward to it. So I'm curious what you guys think about the new 6th Gen 4Runner. Let me know in the comments down below, and if you have any questions, you can also drop those down there, because I now have experience with every single 9 trim levels of the 6th Gen. So if you have questions, drop them down below. And if you are new to this channel, consider clicking subscribe, because I make new videos every single week. As always, thank you guys for watching. I'll talk to you in the next one.